So back with part two. Chaos here. We're talking about PvP and how it affects the gameplay and such. Um, we also talk about PvE challenges, which mainly consisted in learning experience and game mechanic is that your base damage is really shit, and the health of enemies in comparison are pretty long. So fights take quite long to kill somebody in that sense. And I found it interesting because classes like mages or other casters, they're they just scale off base damage, and there's barely any gear that increases your damage, which is interesting to experience that because in Legion you always like intellect gives you damage, and vanilla intellect just gives you crit chance and mana, and crit chance is barely noticeable, and mana makes you able to cast more in the end. So yeah, it's interesting dynamic in that sense. Um, although I would say like the PvE gameplay and probably also the PvP gameplay, it's very one-dimensional. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of abilities. It's not doesn't play super smooth. There's not that much skill involved in it, especially if you play like a class like warrior, where there's broken mechanics like not being able to charge in combat, which is just like okay, whatever. It's just not just like part of the game that should be. If vanilla WoW had like good balance and actual Legion mechanics, combat wise, then it would be a lot better in a sense. But on the topic of on questing, what I found very interesting about vanilla WoW is that many classes and have quests to unlock abilities, and I really like this mechanic because it also helps a lot with the natural flow of the game. Because it makes sense that if you go to a trainer, you just don't like instantly become like super kung fu panda, you know. This makes sense, right? So you learn and disabilities, and you take time to learn them. And I think that in vanilla they had like a good idea behind it, but could be developed further. Because many abilities still are from the vendor and just the trainer and just ka-ching, I now know how to do this. Like if for every ability they teach you for at least for like utility abilities, if they teach you how to use this ability by doing a quest that requires you to do something with that ability that can only be done with that ability, that will be really interesting mechanic, I'd say, for the game or for any RPG in general, for any game with abilities, where you train the player to use these abilities instead of just randomly learning them and then finding out yourself what you can do with them, or never finding out what you can do with them, you know, in that sense. But yeah. Another aspect of questing is a lot of quests have a lot of backtracking in them, which is not that great of a game mechanic, especially in vanilla. But on the other hand, it did make you explore a lot. Um, what I particularly liked about questing in vanilla is that like every single song you pass through everything with the quests. Like everything was explored, and this feeling I didn't have in Legion. Like in Legion, you just do a couple of quests and then you skip the song. Like oh, I've done the main quest line and I skip this on, because you have to do all the main quest lines, and it's like this restriction, right? This where you don't explore, the world. I think that's pretty important because it's a world of Warcraft. So there's a world in that name, so there should be world exploring, right? And in questing they do that pretty well in WoW in that sense. Although I must say, I had to install an add-on just to know where the fuck I have to go, because if you read the text, it's like, okay, it says a name here that I've never been to. Huh, where could it be? Yeah, in that sense, I really like the utility in like the more recent WoW, where it shows you where you have to go approximately, and then if they do that for most quests, and then maybe some quests where there's a little bit of mystery factor in it from time to time, not often, because that gets really frustrating really soon. But if you have an optional quest that has like a mystery in it that can make you really think about that quest, and it really engages you with the game, and you get really into it. You know what I mean? It's a different experience. I think I mentioned that way too many times, because it is very different. Yeah, really, like original WoW from retail is very different, and they went through a lot of design decisions, and the game just barely has anything to do with the retail form. Um, Up to short and long-term objectives. With the whole story about the leveling experience, I could really see every day there's like a short objective of, I just want to get like a couple of levels. I just want to get one level or a couple of levels, or I just want to finish this song. I just want to finish this questing song. I just want to do this dungeon here, or to do this that. And because everything took so long, it really like you just had one objective per day, like one short objective, and that took your whole day. So it's not like in Legion, like, oh, I finished that, okay, I need to do that. Oh, I finished that, I need to do that, and that, and that, and that. It's a whole different feeling than, oh, I want to do that, and then, oh, I'm running out of time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it gives you the feeling like you've like still a lot to do, but not to do in a sense that if you don't do it now, you just lose progression. You know what I mean? It's like the problem with Legion is like there's daily quests, and every time if you miss a daily quest, it's like you feel really bad because, oh man, now I lost progression. I can't like I can't how you say this, um, that daily quest is lost. Like that day is lost. That day with that daily quest is lost. While in Vanilla, it's like there is no daily quests. So these quests you only can do them once. So you're like, okay, I've done them or I don't done them, and it's you don't feel bad because you missed the day and then, oh shit, oh, I missed my daily quest or world quest. Like world quest is just rehash of daily quests, with at the start sounded really good, but then you notice that every quest is the same, and you pretty much have to every day have to check if there is a good quest and then have to do that good quest. And it's not like, it's not what the feeling I expected of the system. I expected the feeling like every time someone else needs your help and just go help them, and instead of that you just feel like, oh, I'm wasting resources, or I'm wasting time, or I'm wasting progression if I don't check every day if a new quest comes up, and then if that quest is the GG quest that you have to do because it rewards so much AP or whatever other rewards. And yeah, that's, I think daily quests are just not a good system. They're not a good game mechanic. I don't see any positive results of daily quests, to be honest. Like, I much rather grind enemies than do daily quests, to be honest. Because, like, grinding makes you really feel like you're you're working towards something. Well, daily quests are just like, uh, give you feeling like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. It's a very different feeling. Um, I don't know if you agree with it or not, but then you have long-term objectives like in Legion. Long-term objectives is like, oh, I want to get the highest item level, and then you get like RNG, and I'm like, oh no, RNG, oh my god, I never get lucky. And then you get lucky and you're not even happy, or you're happy for a day, and then you're like, oh man, I have to grind again. It's different than in Vanilla, where you're level like 20 and like, oh man, I really want to be level 60. Oh man, I've seen so many level 60s, and you really, you like, the objective is really getting to max level, which just got removed out of the game. There's no longer an objective, so that long-term objective is kind of removed in that sense. And like many also say, is like raiding is not the only thing in endgame that you are aiming for. Like, if you have mechanics like gold that are relevant, then in the endgame you're like, oh man, I want to farm gold by farming mobs or farming this or farming that, and that gives you also a kind of endgame feeling to it. And it's just like Legion really misses endgame. It just has raiding, and there's no alternatives really. There's no progression. It's like, yeah, battle pads, but I don't want to play Pokemon, right? There's no like goal or progression that you can get in it, or like PvP. Yeah, PvP community can be cool, but if you don't enjoy doing random BGs or rated battlegrounds and just like enjoy more PvP in the world or anything else, then that's not gonna happen often. And it's so unbalanced in the world that it's not fun. It's not fun at all. You just get fucking one shot in world PvP. It's not good. Um, so that were a couple of the long and short term objectives. And just the last topic is gearing. Found very interesting in gearing in Vanilla. So many weird stats, and a lot of them don't make sense. Like the whole intellect, agility, strength, spirit. Like spirit, for example, so useless because only regens when you don't cast. So you need to have talents that allow you to regen mana while casting, and it's kind of messed up. I also didn't like that while leveling as a caster, there's like no upgrades. It's like, oh, you get intellect and stamina, but your damage never gets higher, you know? And then maybe there's one gear of piece that increases the damage of this element or that, but it's so minuscule and it's so scattered, and it's that I'd really enjoy more like gearing in Legion in that sense. So I think that's more a positive side of Legion in that sense. Although I do like the simplicity in Vanilla, where there's only one secondary stat, and that's crit, and it's nowhere found on gear, except some pieces which have like flat percent crits on it instead of rating. It's also interesting to see that part. But although another mechanic I like, maybe a lot of people dislike, is resists. I really like the idea that you can manage your gear to be resistant to one type of damage. And for example, you're farming a zone that does one type of damage, and you just put gear that gives you resistance against that type of damage. And I find that a really interesting idea, but it was not worked out that well because like the resist you could only get on like green gear mostly and some epic stuff, but green gear just gets outscaled by epic stuff. So if they would like lower the power gap between green gear and epics and everything, maybe that would work. Or maybe just make like green stuff just have fewer stats but more of a specific stat. For example, you want intellect and resist, and then you miss on stamina on gear that you would get normally, or I don't know, something like that. That would, I think that would be more interesting because um, I like the idea of having multiple gear sets for specific stuff that you swap around, and not just one gear slot that does everything and you never think about it anymore, and it just makes it more engaging mechanic. Gearing in general, I think, if they went deeper in that, but that's not very gone into. But I think those are the most topics of Boniobo versus Legion. I think that's it. Yeah. So I was Cal. That was Chaos. Thanks for watching and enjoy.